Tim's American Beauty was made by Robust Tools, America's premier lathe manufacturer. Quality hardened tool rests and live centers too. Robust. Built to turn wood. Enjoyed for a lifetime.
Thompson Lathe Tools. Welcome to a new level of professional wood turning tools. Made by a wood turner for wood turners. Buttered up both sides, got my sheet of paper in here, and the devil is in the details at this point. Make sure where these all meet, they meet dead center. If it's off a little bit, it will affect the way your turning will look. It won't be a deal breaker, but it will take the symmetry off a little bit. And one other thing, when you're doing this last step here, just hypothetically, say your wife calls you and says, hey, we got to go shopping, and you say, okay, honey, let me rush through this. I just got to glue a couple things together and then we'll go. Just remember, hypothetically, if you do that, just remember that you really need to put the piece of paper in between the wood before you glue it together, because then hypothetically when you come back, you're going to take this back to the bandsaw, cut it in half, and then replane it, and then glue it again and clamp it for another 24 hours. Hypothetically. Yes. Anyway, like I said, the devils are in the detail. Now, we've got a block made up for this turning right here, and that's the one we're going to turn, but we got a couple more steps before we can get on the lathe. Now we're back at the joiner. Anyway, one thing, like I said, the devil's in the details at this point. If you cut this on a table saw, you do not have to worry about this next step. But if you cut it on a bandsaw, you might wind up with one square being slightly smaller or slightly larger than the other squares. And actually, if you cut it on a table saw and when you come to the jointer and you cut too much off one side, you might wind up with a side that doesn't match. So the goal is to find the smallest one, measure it, and find the largest one, and then make a mark about how much you have to take off of it. Then you can go to the bandsaw and trim that little bit of excess off, or you can try to do it here at the jointer. It's a little bit easier to do it with a saw, but you want all four of these to be symmetrical because it makes a difference on how things look once you get into the turning part. But right now what I want to do is I want to clean up all four sides and plane them flat, because this is the last chance we have to get this all cleaned up to when we turn all this around and do the inside out part and glue it together. So here we go, one more time on my woodworking machine. No sound because it's just cutting the glue. There we go. Now once you've glued all this up, the ends could be a little bit off, and we're going to be holding this with a drive center and a live center, so I want these flat. All I'm going to do is just take a sliver of wood off the edge right here. So I'm using my slide right here to help me out. Turn this on. There we go. There we go. Flip it and do this side. Now when I was over at the bandsaw, I cut my fun numbers off of my circle, so I'm putting them back on. One other thing I'm doing is I'm just drawing a reference line in case I go really nuts and forget, but these points are what are going to turn inside and glue together. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? But I took an awl and also marked a tiny hole there right at the intersection and right there, so when I mount this, it's a little bit easier to find the center point on this. I don't want to be off on this at all. And when you do that with the awl, don't hit it too hard because you could start splitting apart the brown paper in here. The other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use a step center here. And if you're familiar with it, it has a little spring inside of it. So by using this, it's not going to be pushing and driving into the wood so hard as it would break it. And then down here, you can see my live center. I got the littlest bit of the tip sticking out there. So it's just going to make contact. That's going to push in and hold it. The whole idea is to not hold this so tightly or drive something into the center that it splits it apart. That would be bad. You don't want it flying apart on you. So I've got that there. I'm going to bring this in, and I'm going to kind of bring this in gently and fish around right here on this end. If I fish around a little bit like that, I got it there. It's in the hole right now, and that's pretty good. Now there's one other little thing I'm going to show you. Let me grab it right here. Is we're going to put a little more security on here. And that's nice to have because I've seen some guys, there are some people I've seen who've used pipe clamps at this point. But you think about this. This is all glued up with brown paper, right? You get a catch, anything goes wrong, that seam could break, this whole thing could fly at you. That would not be a lot of fun. So what we want to do is I'm taking, and doing it very badly, poorly, it's packing tape that is reinforced with fiber in it. And it's really sticky. There we go. Like so. So this is different than masking tape. If you had masking tape on here, all it takes is one little cut here and it completely takes all the strength away. So I'm going to pull this around and we're just going to do a tight wrap a couple times around each end here. And by doing that, if something catastrophic happens, this is my backup to help keep this from falling apart, flying apart actually, and coming at me or going someplace and damaging something or someone. And you want a good couple of wraps on there just to be secure. So I'm going to get the other end wrapped up, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the design of this. Now we're mounted on the lathe. We got our tape on here, and let me show you how things are sitting in here. Right now, this is where the shape is that we're going to cut. It isn't like this though. We don't cut from the center out. This is inside out, so we're cutting from the outside in, which will become the inside out later. Anyway, we're doing the simplest of shapes just so you can get the idea of the concept here. So I'm going to take my Sharpie pen. Here is our mesh. This is where the two pieces of wood go together. I want to do something that kind of tapers like this, has a curve to it, maybe comes to there. I might be making this a little big, but I can always stay inside the lines. If you go outside, then that's when you get into trouble. And we'll bring that about like that. So this is a nice shape like that. What it will do is it'll give me the ability to make this outside shape curved. If you made this one big circle, then this has to be a circle because it follows the inside that you made on the outside when you did the inside outside. Anyway, so that's on there. It's a very simple turning. I'm going to put my glasses on here, spin this, make sure nothing hits, turn my lathe speed down, and I'm going with a small spindle gouge right now. And you really can't see the line once it gets going. You could try drawing it on all the sides so you can see it, but it's really not necessary. You just kind of want to get in there and just start whittling away a little bit. And so, swinging my body and just kind of coming in and making little movements because you're cutting a lot of air, remember. Now the one line I can see pretty good is this side over here. And I'm sneaking up on it. And I want to stop just a little short of it like that. The one line I can't really see is right here. So let's just go ahead and stop this real quick, see where I am. Oh, look, I'm right on it. So I'm doing pretty good. So really, all I'm going to do is whittle this out a little bit. You can use your spindle gouge, which works very well. One thing that really surprised me was I grabbed one of my EasyWood tools, and I'll get that here in just a second. And I used a carbide tip scraper. And I was surprised how good the wood looked. And when you think about it, we're doing a spindle turning, so it's not that unexpected that the carbide would work well on that. So let me raise, there's our shape. Let me raise my tool rest up just a little bit and bring it back so I can give myself a little room. And let me show you this right here. We're going to grab the little straight number 1 cutter and turn this on. Pick up the speed a little bit. Now, one thing I must tell you, I don't have my face mask on because I want you to hear me talk. But if you're doing this, I highly recommend you wear a face mask because despite the good glue, 24 hours to set up, and the tape on there, something can happen. You do not want this to come and whack you because if it gets you good, and it will leave a permanent mark probably. And you can see how well this cuts, and I'm going to stop this right here, and we'll look at the finish on here. That looks really nice. Now I'm going to go in a ways because the only thing you don't want to do is go much narrower than about there, because if you go narrower than that, these are going to be very fragile sides and it'll be hard to turn, at least on your first one. You can play with it a little bit more and get a little more dangerous as you get along on this and learn what you're doing. So anyway, I'm going to finish this up. We'll do a little sanding, and then we'll show you the magic of inside out. Now we're ready for the real fun part. This is also a picky part. I've got a little chisel, right? I'm going to try to find that mark right there. That's where they intersect, and see if I can do this without wobbling. Take a mallet and go. Now watch. See down here? Look what's happening. Splits apart beautifully. See, this is why if you make these very, very thin, you split them apart, they might snap. So we want to split everything apart, and sometimes finding that seam is not easy. I think that's it. I think that's it. I think that's it. There we go. Okay. One more time. And it's really, just takes a little twist. I mean, there's not a lot of pressure holding that together. The next step that you would take, though, would be without paper this time. Oops, that's the wrong ones. I want 2 and 1 together. This is why you keep all these things sorted properly, because it makes a bit of a difference. Let's see here. Okay, here is 2, like so. Now, this was together like so. These are pointing out. Now, I want these to point in like so. So you take number 4 and number 3, and you want them to point in like so too. Now, we're not gluing them all together at once. We're going to glue together 1 and 2, clamp, 3 and 4, clamp, and you do that with this glue. Again, the tight bond, which I really like. Just make sure you don't get a lot of squeeze out, so you don't want glue seeping down into the shape right here, because that'd be ugly. So make sure you come right up to the edge with the glue, because you've got to have good contact all the way through. Now, I don't have 24 hours, so I'm going to use some of the Tight Bond Instant Bond Gel. It's worked really well for me, but again, this is my favorite. So if you're going to do this, use the wood glue, put them together, clamp for 24 hours. Then, once they're clamped for 24 hours, you're going to take this back, if you need to the joiner to make these sides flat, and you're going to clamp that together like that. And then once you've done that, then you go back to the lathe to turn again. Now I mounted the piece on the lathe after planing the sides and gluing all 4 pieces together. Remember, for you this would be 24 hours later. I have this position on the lathe like so. So the tip is going to be here, the head's going to be up here, and I've gone ahead and turned a tenon on here, because the last step I have to put this in a chuck. When I started turning this, I did have the tape on there to make sure everything was going to hold together while I started the turning. And that's a very safe thing to do, because if something lets loose, it'll probably let loose right off the bat. However, it could still let loose anytime during this process. So again, you should be wearing a face mask, because if this flies apart, it will hurt. You just want to hear me talk and see my beautiful face anyway, unobstructed. I'm sure that's why I don't have one on. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn this down, and really all I'm doing is I'm following the shape of the inside. That's telling me what the shape of my outside is. So I'm following this curve right here. I'm going to follow a natural point to there and a little top up there, so we'll be curving that around. You just want to make this the same thickness and get it rounded on those ends. So I'll just take a few more minutes, and then we'll get ready to work on just the tip and sanding, and we'll be done. I'm ready to hang it on our tree. Okay, I've put the turning into the chuck of the jaw, into the chuck jaws. And one thing I did is I brought my tailstock up to give me a little more support, but very gentle support. Look how fragile this is. You can see my hands through here, and the chuck hurts too. So that's very fragile. You put a lot of pressure on there, boom, you're gonna blow it up. But what I wanna do right now is I'm gonna nibble this down and part off the tip here. And then, since it's in the chuck jaws, it's not gonna go flying off. That was the whole reason having it mounted like this. And I've already sanded this. I'll show you how I did that in just a second here. Get this to part off. There we go. I don't want a real sharp point on there. There we go. And it is loose. That's cool. When you're sanding this, you just want to use strips of paper, right? And very gently bring it up against the wood. That way you sand it, looks really nice, and you don't break it. So right now you can see that it's very delicate, nice little fragile flower there. I'm just gonna part this off, and then we're ready to put a hook in it and put a finish on it. Well, now I'm putting on some Watco Danish oil, and it's really neat finish because it soaks in. You can put another coat on in 30 minutes, and 8 hours later, you're ready to go. If you want to make it shiny, you can put polyurethane on top of it. And as you can see right here, I drilled a little tiny hole and put a hook in so we can hang our ornament. And look how pretty that is right now. That's unusual. And believe me, you can do a lot of different shapes. You can actually hang things on the inside. You got a lot of different ways you can go with this. Well, now, while I'm going to wait for that 8 hours, I guess we could go ahead and put this up on our fancy tree. Till next time, keep turning. Hey, we haven't got much of a budget. What'd you expect?
Tim's American Beauty was made by Robust Tools, America's premier lathe manufacturer. Quality hardened tool rests and live centers too. Robust. Built to turn wood. Enjoyed for a lifetime.
Thompson Lathe Tools. Welcome to a new level of professional wood turning tools. Made by a wood turner for wood turners.